So today we have Laura Miguel on Keen on Yoga podcast. Welcome, Laura, to Keen on Yoga. We met in Mysore many years ago, and it's nice to finally chat to you. I don't really think we ever chatted in Mysore.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and to be able to
Yeah.
share with you.
Today, it really is one of those occasions where we don't really have a strong topic of agenda. I actually just want to learn about Laura's story. I always found you had a lovely practice in Mysore and a nice energy in Mysore as well. So I was always intrigued to hear a little bit about you and also about Laura's from South America. So hear about particularly Brazil and the importance and the growing popularity of Ashtanga in Brazil as well. So I guess we'll start at the obvious place, Laura, and just tell us a little bit about how you got into yoga and then how you got into Ashtanga, whether that was at the same time or whether it was a gradual process. We'll take it from there.
Yeah, it was at the same time.
Okay.
I was a lawyer before practicing, and I had to pass through really hard tests to get my license to be a lawyer. But I was very confused, my mind very confused. I could memorize. I get really nervous when I get to the tests. And then I decided not to study anymore and try to find a way to keep my mind calm. So then I found a studio. It was straight an Ashtanga studio. And I started to practice for 6 months every single day, try to be like steady. And then everything in my life started to work. Like I passed through all those tests and exams and I found a job. And then after a year, I quit the job because I want to teach, I want to go to India. So yoga gave me the job I wanted, but at the same time, I had to I saw how hard it was to be a lawyer and fight every day and fight in causes that I don't really trust. So then I said I need to quit this and I need to go to India to rediscover myself. I didn't want to teach actually. I just want to go and practice and be open to whatever happens. So when I went to India for the first time, I remember I just took all my high heels out. I gave my high heels. I didn't want my lawsuits, and I went with an empty luggage because I want to wear new clothes. I want to think different. So the first time was like this. I wanted to
Yeah.
discover myself.
When was that? How long ago was that? What year? And did you go? Was it Mysore you went to? That
Yeah,
and
I went to
yes, you went
my,
straight to Mysore. Right. Okay.
yes, it
Yeah.
was 2005, I think
Okay.
so. And then as I practice Ashtanga, my teacher went to Mysore, I think, like 2 years before me. And she said, okay, so if you want to go and practice, you go to Mysore. So then I arrived, I sent a letter. I never had the letter back. I bought my ticket, I rent a house, I went there. And Sarasvati was there teaching, and Guruji wasn't teaching anymore. He was just there. And I didn't like. I was too crowded. I was too fancy. I wanted a teacher that I could be able to chat and to know about Indian culture, about Ashtanga. I was very new into Ashtanga. I practiced like for 2 years maximum. So then I went to travel in to south of India. I went to Kerala, Chennai, to the Sikachar place. And then I didn't practice there. I wanted, but I didn't send the letter, so I couldn't practice. So I was very open. I was like this Guruji. I didn't know about this. And then I was in Kovalam and I found a Swedish girl we met. And then she said, no, but if you want to go, if you want to practice Ashtanga, you should go back to Mysore and practice with Shashadri. Was another teacher in Mysore. So then I went back to Mysore and I practiced with Shashadri. So he became my teacher. And we were in a very small group, I think like 8, maximum 15 students. So I could be really close to him and talk and meet his family. I still, when I go to Mysore, last time I went to Mysore was 2019. I still go and visit him. I went to his son's wedding. So was the idea I had from a teacher. And so I can say that he was my first Ashtanga teacher after my Brazilian teacher, that it's Karin.
Who is your Brazilian teacher, by the way?
Karin Reuser. She
Right.
is now living in Australia, I think. She moved and she's not teaching Ashtanga anymore. She left Brazil.
Right. And I
Yes.
mean, I didn't know any of that stuff about you. When you were in Mysore, I'd met you obviously with Sharathji later in the Shala, and you seemed very on program with the that kind of community of Ashtanga. Let's say, what made you change? I mean, how did you find Shashadri? Because a lot of people won't necessarily know of Shashadri, I suppose, these days. I mean, there's so many Ashtanga teachers in Mysore, right? But at the time, it was really like, well, you go to Sharath and Guruji, or you go to Shashadri or Venkatesh, even before that, like it wasn't
Yes.
so many people, like, just like
Yes, and
that.
I was the crazy Brazilian that went to Mysore to practice with the teacher that wasn't
Mm,
Sharat. But Sharat wasn't so big as it's now because it was in that period of transition. Then I remember later Sharat has his small, in his house, a small group of students
mm.
when Guruji was alive. So it was in a transition moment, but I didn't know all this. Guruji is the big teacher, Sarasvati, Sharat. I was like, okay, I want to just practice and I don't care about the hierarchy of the teachers. I just want to go and do my practice. So I had like two ideas of being in India. One was to practice Ashtanga and to know more about the method and find myself through that, and then do charity work. So my first trip to India that I stayed 2 years was like doing all this plan, you know. So then after I was practicing Shashadri, I found a job like volunteer work in Nepal. Then I stayed there for 8 months.
So you were 2 years originally in India, and then another 8 months in Nepal, like continuously.
No,
No,
no, 2 years
right,
doing this, Nepal and India.
right.
Yeah, I came to
It's a long
Brazil
time.
after a year. Then I stayed in Brazil here 20 days, and then I went back to, because I didn't want to leave India and Asia anymore. I just want to keep I never thought I would be in Brazil again. Like I found Asia my home place, and especially India. So yeah, I
Right.
started practicing Sharat, I think 2009, 2010.
What made you change? I mean, and again, like for people that don't know Shashadri, I mean, what was his teaching like, and what made you decide to seek a different teacher?
Yeah, because I have a very good friend, and she was like really strict to Sharathji. And then she said, but if you want to teach, then I started to want to teach. Before that, teaching wasn't a idea for me. And then she said, if you want to teach, you have to come to the source. So I think it's time for you to come and practice with Sharat. And then I felt that I need more technique, or like I needed to know more about the method. But Shashadri is a very good teacher. But the schedule and the lead classes, Shashadri doesn't teach lead. So then I said, okay, so it's time for me to go. But then I think I was ready to be in the shala again, because I was more mature in my practice, and I couldn't, I didn't feel anymore the competition. I was like really straight to my mat. On the first time I went, I felt like, oh, like it's very competitive. People are asking which asana I am, if I'm on the lead intermediate or primary, if I have a new asana today. So I didn't like that. So when I went on the second time, this didn't disturb me. I was like more stable and confident. So I just look and laugh. Yeah.
And what was the charity work you were doing, by the way?
I work, yeah, that's another long story. And I went to teach English for Nepali, for Tibetans that had to move to Nepal because of the political problems in Tibet. But meanwhile, I met a Portuguese friend that he became a friend later, that was building an orphanage for kids, and he needed help. So then I stopped teaching English and I went to help him with the orphanage. That the orphanage was to help girls that suffer sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And but then the project changed. We found an orphanage that sell kids to India and to China for prostitution, and then we took those kids and opened an orphanage for those kids. So the 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 purpose of the project changed, but yeah, so that's the work I did. But I had a lawyer background, my work was like checking the documents, go to the court, because Nepal, like, it's a big mountain country, so the parents had to travel to Kathmandu. They walked to Kathmandu for 5, 6, 7 days, leave the kids in the orphanage to be able to study. As in the village, they don't have a good education. So my job was like take the documents of the kids, go to the court, and publish in the newspaper where the kids were. So then the parents could go and visit the kids in the new orphanage.
Right.
Nepal is very tricky. They have so they take the kids to Kathmandu to study, but they
Right.
don't investigate which orphanage is this. So there are many illegal orphanage that sells the girls for prostitution and to like organs, merchandise, like.
Oh God. Right.
Yeah, so that was my work in Nepal.
Right. And I mean, that was still a while back now. So, what have you been doing more recently? I mean, how has how has the teaching progressed? Obviously, you said you didn't want to teach, and well, you have been a teacher for many years now and a well-known one in Brazil. So how has this progressed? And maybe, well, let's talk a little bit about, let's also involve the history of a little bit of Ashtanga in Brazil and how that's developed.
Yeah,
If you want to talk about
yeah.
your own role as a teacher and other teachers in Brazil, that, because it's a very popular practice in Brazil, I believe.
Now it is, yes.
Yeah.
So then I came to Brazil after these 2 years and I opened my shala, but I wasn't authorized yet. But I opened a small shala. I live in Porto Alegre in the very south of Brazil. I'm not in a tropical and beach area. So yeah, then I start to teach, and we just had Matthew when I opened my shala teaching Ashtanga. We had Regina also, but I never met her, but I know for sure. And Matthew used to give all this workshop, and he was the main Ashtanga teacher in Brazil.
And Matthew Vollmer is actually English, isn't he? Originally.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Matthew and
But I've
Carla.
heard of them, and they were there in Brazil for many years. But then they're in Germany
They,
now,
yeah,
or
they went to Berlin. They opened a shala
right,
in Berlin, but now they are back in Brazil.
right, right.
Yes, it's very nice to have him back, and like because he's the root for us.
I have been in talking to him about having a chat on the podcast as well, actually, but I haven't managed to catch up with him yet. And how have you did you learn from Matthew, or did you learn from any Portuguese? Brazilian teachers as well
Yeah,
as in yeah.
I practice with
Mm,
Matthew. I think like just workshops, very few workshops, because straight went to India. I want to go there and to know Ashtanga from India. I wanted to connect with India. I like Indian culture. So Matthew was never my teacher, but he's a good friend and I really respect him as a teacher. But uh, I never learn with a Portuguese or Brazilian teacher instead of
mm,
just my first teacher, Katia Karin, that taught me the primary series and a little bit of intermediate.
mm.
But all I know is from India. So yeah, then because Brazil is very far from India and it's really expensive for us to go.
Mm.
So in that time, in that moment, we didn't have many teachers. Then we have Elena, we have Tiago, um, we had Mario that he stopped teaching Ashtanga after a while. We have this like group after Matthew that start to teach and start to open their own shalas. But it was a very small thing in Brazil at that time. I think now it's big. Now it's very big. Now we have a new generation going to Mysore. It's really easy to go now.
Right.
And with the connections with the internet, with the iPhone, because the time we went was by letter, and then we didn't have news from home. We had to go to learn houses, and it was scary.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that it was there was so much uncertainty around the early trips because you just wrote the letter and you didn't get a reply, and then you couldn't like find your accommodation easily, and all these things had to be kind of word of mouth. Whereas they've really
Yes,
changed now, and you can do everything online, really. But do you think
yeah, it
that
was a very
that
easy way.
do you think Ashtanga has taken a particular route in Brazil for any reason, or is there anything specific you'd like to say about the way that it's developed in Brazil? I mean, obviously you have like a body culture already in Brazil. It's already kind of like it seems like it would be a good fit. Let's say, yeah.
Yes. So Ashtanga is really physical,
Mm,
but through our body, like opens the door to the philosophy, you know. But I think Brazil, it's like really body.
Yeah.
uh, I don't
I
see,
always imagine that. Yeah.
yeah, I see some students after some years start studying the yoga philosophy and start to be interested in that. But what makes Brazilian students, not 100%, I can't say about everybody, but what I feel here is that they want to body work. They want to be like strong with good muscles, skinny. So I think that's my big challenge in Brazil. As uh, my yoga path is not related with the physical, was related about finding a purpose of life, like finding myself. Uh, I think that's my challenging here, like
Mm.
to say to people that is just a way to get there. Is not physical, is not the end of this practice. But I think it's a very physical, is like a really show up and clothes, like really like pink, red, green clothes, and then
I mean, you're
practice.
saying all the things that I was kind of had in my mind about Ashtanga in Brazil. To be honest, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it is a way. It has been taken in a certain spirit there, which is kind of fun, you know, and flamboyant, and you know. I mean, I can remember the Brazilians at the front in Mysore, you know, in the front in the front rows in Mysore, you know, and then that, you know, the kind of showy and the handstand and the, it's a fun thing, isn't it? You know, and
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I do think you have your work cut out there in Brazil to teach it from probably more so than some places, perhaps, to teach it from a different angle, maybe. But I mean, along those lines, I mean, you know, I know you these days from all your social media on Ayurveda. You've studied extensively since your return to become an Ayurvedic consultant practitioner. However, I don't think we call them doctors. I don't know how you call yourself, but you know, can you just talk a little bit about that? I think that will be very interesting, and how you relate that to the practice and your overall vision of what you're doing now. You know,
yeah.
it'd be
But
lovely to
just a
hear.
parenthesis here, I think I
Yes,
have this way to teach, and the group that came before me and in the same moment as I became authorized. I think we have a big uh, difference from the teachers that went in Mysore after this big boom, you know, and the teachers that came after. I think Mysore became very crowded. The relationship with Sharat, like, is not is more about um, it's a competition to have a relationship with him, and I didn't find this on my time in Mysore. So I think the teachers that became from that period has this idea and bring this idea to the classes that Ashtanga is not just physical. I have my friends Thiago, Elena, and Lucia that they have this approach. You know, it's just I think we are living another moment in Ashtanga in Brazil that became like really
right, right, right.
fast.
Yeah, that's
You
interesting. I
know,
mean,
like
you know,
many practitioners in my classes. Sometimes I ask my students just to eat.
oh God. Right,
You know,
right, right. Yeah, yeah. No, I know it's a different era. It is a different era, isn't it? And I mean, I forgot about Lucia as well. Yeah.
yeah.
So where's she these days? Somewhere
She's in
Ibiza or somewhere like that,
Spain.
isn't she? In Spain somewhere, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, all these old people. I mean, you know, it's a bit of a segue, but I mean, I think you're making an important point there that there's definitely been different eras, and in those different eras, just due to the logistics of how things have been set up, a different kind of approach has kind of been engendered, it's been created amongst the people that have been there. So, you know, at the time you mentioned, it was a funny time, and I was there at the same time. You know, where that was the end of the Patabi Joyce era,
Yes.
and so those old teachers, were still kind of now and again coming for Batavi Joyce, but they weren't really in the same manner, coming, and it was a very different time. And then obviously, the transference of power was changing, and people were, starting to go much more towards Sharat, who was previous to that, very much on the sidelines. It was all about Batavi Joyce, and and those teachers that were around at that time, as you said, it wasn't really a bun fight to talk to or to develop a relationship with Sharathji, because it was very much open and possible, at that time. I remember the Purple Valley retreats, because I was running Purple Valley, and we used to bring him down there, and he would just be sitting there at dinner. Like, you could go up and talk to him one to one for 20 minutes easily, so it was a different time, and I think you're right in saying that it probably did help with creating a different kind of attitude around it. Whereas now, you said it was competitive then, but I imagine now, and I haven't been for a number of years, but I imagine now it's become a different level of kind of, the way that people are trying to kind of get some kind of contact with Sharat, which is natural and noticeable, because you do want contact, as you said, straight away with your teacher,
Yeah. Yeah. And we used to learn intermediate and third in Mysore. But now in Brazil, we have more teachers. So we are teaching these students advanced postures. So now we have a really good group and powerful asanas practitioners that we didn't have before.
Right.
So also the level in asana
Right.
is really high. I
Yeah.
remember, do you remember the lead intermediate with Sharat? We were like 15, 20 students.
Yep, I do. Unfortunately, all too well. I remember that. Yeah,
And now it's like,
yeah.
wow.
I know everyone's doing it. I think that marks a general kind of dissemination of it, though, right? Because at the time it was only a few of us, and then, and the level. Like, I mean, I remember learning intermediate in the UK, and it was only like you couldn't really learn it from many people because it wasn't done that much, Whereas now it's like almost like if you're not doing intermediate, then you're really a beginner as such, which is not the case.
Yes.
But that's the kind of like, I think it was said by maybe. I know it was said by my wife, but I think other people as well, like, like advanced is the new intermediate, right? Because everyone does intermediate now. So now it's like, well, if you're not doing advanced, then it's like, like that,
Yeah.
so the bar is constantly being pushed, and you're right. I mean, it's like there are the level of people doing the advanced asanas and the intermediate there's so many more people, and the level is perceivably higher, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The
yeah.
shame is that on the beginning of my teaching path, I received more old students, was like old and young students. Now, old people, they don't want to practice. They
You
don't
mean
go.
literally old in age?
Yeah, old in
Older
age.
people. Oh, really? I get the opposite. I have older people come to me now that they want to practice. The older people are wanting to practice Ashtanga, and the younger people, I think they just go to some vinyasa or something, which is much more fun. But yeah, I find my level of student has gotten older, not younger, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because they didn't know what Ashtanga was, but now with the social media, they know and they look at that, all those asanas, and say, "Oh no, I can't do this, so I'm gonna do a hatha yoga
Right.
class."
Mm-mm.
So I think this changed a little bit, but okay, I think it's just I feel that the students are changing.
Yeah, but I think maybe what it is that in Brazil, the yoga has been later. So you
Yeah.
haven't got maybe the explosion of all the different yoga scene. Whereas, in the US and in Europe, you've got all these different yogas, which are like for the younger people, which has got the music and all the different things, And so those old Ashtanga people, they've stuck with the Ashtanga and they've gotten older, Whereas all the young people coming into yoga now, they don't go to Ashtanga, they're going to these new ones, just like when we got into yoga, it was like, well, you got Iyengar, you can do that, but it's a bit slow, or you can do Hatha, but it's even slower. And then it's like, well, your one choice of something faster is Ashtanga. So like, that was obvious, but now if I was a young person, I probably wouldn't necessarily get into Ashtanga because you've got all the different new ones to get through first, kind of
And
thing.
it's so strict.
Yeah, it's strict. It's repetitive. You haven't got the music. I don't know. I'd like to think I would do it, but I probably would be swayed to do something more immediately fun and variable. I suppose. I don't know, but
Yeah.
without going on too much of a segue, I do want to have a little bit of time to discuss the Ayurveda and how it relates to the yoga, because I think it is important. And people often said it's like two wings of a bird. Like you need the yoga and the Ayurveda, and they were always taught together previously. And these days, it's like they're very much
Yeah.
separate. And certainly,
Yeah.
what I notice, and you mentioned with the students and telling them to eat and that kind of thing, is that half of it is really, it's not about the yoga physical; it's about just general lifestyle around the yoga. And
And health.
I think most people don't really have any context or way to kind of help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because in Ayurveda we have all this technique to have healthy and a good life, a long life. So if I have a physical asana practice that deplete my body, that takes my immunity, my my ojas that we call in Ayurveda, it's not working for Ayurvedic perspective. So I try to bring this balance to my students to have a healthy asana practice. That they don't lose muscles and fat, you know.
Mm-mm.
So
I think
then
it's easily could easily be the case. I think it's a
it's
good
very
point. Yeah, with
easy.
Ashtanga especially, it's a depletive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I see students practicing intermediate and third, like with all those arm balances, it's like a practice of 2 hours and 20, 30 minutes. I don't let them doing. I cut, I split in like everyone, I split in a different asana if I feel like. I just uh, let my intuition work on that. And okay, so do the whole intermediate and or do until Karandavasana and then do to Galavasana, for example. I I take away some asanas when I see that the student is getting really skinny or they don't sleep.
Hmm.
You
Mm.
know, the practice is to give us a stable and happy life.
Mm. Mm.
Is to take us the juice of life, and just
Mm.
practice. So that's the way I bring Ayurveda to the practice. And also when I see some unbalance, uh, I give like some pranayamas for the kaphas, for example, that they have like mucus problem and digestive problems when
Mm.
it's winter here, because the winter here is very humid and cold, not your English cold, but Brazilian cold. And
It's like 20 degrees or something.
yeah,
Oh, it's
so
a bit cold.
yeah, no, but
Need
it's
to wear a light jumper.
we can have here like 4 degrees
Okay,
Celsius,
that is
right?
cold, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
10.
Did
And then
you?
I give Bastrika for these students. I give some pranayamas, and they feel really, really good. Or some uh, Bastis, and I give like through the practice. I try to give some Ayurvedic techniques to help them.
Did you start the Ayurveda due to your own experiences, or did you? I mean, was it through your own need or through your right through your own experience? Because I'm just thinking about my own time in Mysore and how you were doing it as well. I know that these advanced postures, especially the advanced series, leg behind the heads, and this how stimulating they can be, and how you want a regrounding. Really, right? You're kind of it's easy with the Mysore heat, the sweat, to lose that ojas, to lose that vitality, and then you're doing all these spinal stimulations so much, and so you're not only tired, but you're also overly wired, overly stimulated, and and there appears to be the need to balance this somehow, but I think we've lost that. I mean, even in, I remember in India when I was spending a long time running Purple Valley, and the Indians would say to me, when I was choosing something at a restaurant at certain points, they would, no, you don't eat that now. This is the winter now. This is not the food for that time. And so there's evidently this kind of knowledge of different things to ground and stimulate, and in traditional cultures there, even still now. But I think as a Westerner coming, you just push as hard as you can, and then you're getting more postures. And you can see, and I know obviously you're speaking as well, that it can easily unbalance a student who
Yes.
hasn't got any other grounding in terms of lifestyle choices, like myself
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah. And when you think about longevity and have this strong practice until you get older, you need to nourish yourself with food and oil and good sleep, you know. So I'm not a teacher that is gonna tell the students to practice at 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, no, you have to sleep. Practice like 10, teach and practice. Don't wake up at 3:30. You are gonna have like uh, problems to sleep when you get older. So when we are young, with this practice and with the knowledge that this practice is to balance our system, we create disease. And and when you are young, just doing all these strong asanas and feeling really special of doing all these strong and hard asanas, you don't think about the future.
No.
So as a
When you're
teacher,
young, you never think about the future.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a teacher, I have to tell my young students to, okay, stop. You are gonna get old, and if you want to keep this practice, you have to nourish yourself to keep this. Because when you get 40, when your menopause start to come, you are gonna have really hard pains, because women, we have this period of life that everything comes back. The way you treat your body when you were younger comes back in the menopause. So if you don't look at this, and as a teacher, I need to advise them, it is their option, but they need to know that if they treat with violence their body, they are gonna to, to lead with this after a while.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's a very
Thanks for
short.
saying that. Yeah.
And when I think about my Ashtanga life and all these crazy asanas that we used to do, and now I'm not with this enthusiasm anymore. I do, but it's not like, yeah, I want to do. Sometimes I feel like, sometimes I don't feel like. Sometimes I just do primary and intermediate for the whole month, and I don't want to see third. Sometimes I'm like, okay, my routine is good. I'm not traveling. I want to focus on my third. And then I'm happy, but I don't deplete my body for that. And when I see this, my background, and it's too short. We have a really short asana, strong practice. It's like, if you started to, it's like 20 years. It's short, because then we have more 40 to live in a healthy and
So,
stable life.
so you're saying it should be short. The intense asana period should be shorter. Is that what
No,
you're
what
saying?
I'm saying is
No.
that we have this energy to do strong asanas, and the when it's new, when we wake up and practice and go to Mysore and don't have partner, don't have kids, don't have anyone, just because of the practice, is a really short time if you see
Mm,
the life in long term, So if I'm gonna die when I turn 80, and I had a really strong Mysore life from 20 to 40, is really short. So I can't have these 20 years to deplete my body, because I need more 40 years of a healthy body.
I see. Yes. Yes. So practicing, I mean, the thing is, what you're saying is very, very relevant, but I think so few teachers are still really having that long-term view. And I think that one of the problems is that the student is encouraging, the student is wanting. So it's almost like the teacher, especially now in a competitive world, the teacher ends up giving the student what they want and feeling like they're selling the practice or selling themselves. And because no one wants to hear, oh, just take it gently, like a young person, oh, just take it gently and think about when you're 50. I mean, no young person wants to hear that. So it's not such a popular message as, hey, we're going to help you do advanced asana, and right, like it's going to be really dynamic. And, like it's the long-term viewpoint is less marketable, let's say.
Yes.
But obviously, when you come to 40, like you are and I am. I'm sure you're not really 40, but you pay the price for these kind of things when you're young, and I'm sure you pay the price to a certain extent. I certainly would say I pay the price for over pushing when I'm young. I would have done it differently had I gone back and done it again, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that I need to tell to my students when they are like
Mm,
learning Kapotasana, and they do Kapotasana, they don't catch the heels, and then in the same class they try again to go to,
mm.
and then the third time they go. I say, stop, we have tomorrow. You can do the same asana tomorrow. You don't have to do 3, 4, 5 times Kapotasana. you know and I sometimes I feel angry, like, what do you want to prove to yourself that you can do on the third or on the fourth time in one Mysore class? We have 6 days a week. Just breathe and enjoy. If you can't grab your heels.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an obvious message, but it's so nice to hear someone else saying it to you. And I kind of think if even for me, if you'd said that to me in that kind of way when I was young, if I was in your class, I might have actually listened to you and not. And so, I mean, it's such a simple thing, and everyone kind of knows it, or a lot of people know that it's not right. This compulsive and obsessional pushing, and 5 times, 10 times Karundavasana, Kapotasana, leg behind head. But it takes someone to say it to reinforce it to yourself. You don't need to do this. You don't ever need to do this, or if you do want to do this, then give yourself time. Let it happen naturally and without forcing and without pain.
Yeah, yeah, and I noticed after the online Ashtanga classes started now, because in our time, for me, it was like this. I learn a posture, the advanced postures. I come back home, and I had to keep working on that. And I had no teacher, and Sharath was in India and I was in Brazil. So if I had a good chance to go and visit him, was in 6 months, but sometimes it took a year to meet him again. So for the whole year that I didn't see him, I practiced the same asana as he gave me. And now with the online classes, you can see many teachers every single day. And every day, if you do a good asana in a good figure perspective, the next day you receive another asana. But it's an advanced asana that your body needs to digest, needs to understand, needs to be like able to receive the asana. So now is too fast. And I remember when the online classes came, I had few students that were practicing third that I new personally. And then new students came because they want to do third. And I receive on the beginning, but then in the end I was like, I don't like to teach third for people that I never met personally, that are not my students, that I don't meet in workshops, that don't follow me, like, in a way. So I start to stop teaching third for them.
Mm.
And they went out and they went to
Right.
practice with another teacher. And this another teacher give postures. But I didn't want to give. I want to give. I travel the whole country. They can meet me once a year, twice a year, because I think
It's true. Your students would be Brazilian as well, wouldn't they? Because it would be in Portuguese, or
my
it could be
students
Portuguese,
are
I
Brazilian.
suppose. Yeah.
They are
So,
not.
what are you teaching? Are you teaching online still, or what are you teaching now? Are you teaching in person?
I have my
How and where are you
students.
teaching?
I
Right.
have my shala,
Okay.
but I also teach online. I still teach online. And I have a very nice group now since last year. I have a really strong and friendly and simple students online. So I don't want to quit because I
Mm.
feel that we built such a sincere connection that I don't like to stop that. But I
Mm.
don't receive new online students.
You don't.
No.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. So
Yeah.
you're happy with the group you've got.
Yes. And I think
Right.
we are
Right.
doing a great job and they
Mm.
are
Mm.
understanding the practice. I don't
Mm.
want these big online students that because the relationship, to travel to
Yeah. Yeah.
to be able to sit and have tea with your teacher, this is so precious, and I don't want the my students to lose this, to lose this connection and just like buy asanas from online classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I ever find myself in Brazil, in the south of Brazil, I shall come and see you. To be have have you tell me not to push myself so much. That'd be lovely to hear. Have you got any final advice, and that Ayurveda has given you for the practice? Any particular things that you might say to a listener about take home basic take homes for Ayurveda that you might apply to a yoga practitioner? Anything that comes to mind particularly?
Abhyanga, like to use oil
Okay, to the oil. Yeah.
every day, is not like just on the rest day, but like every day. um, some breathe techniques and focus on the breath, because that's not Ayurvedic, this is Ashtanga, but we lose the breath to extend the breath.
Mm,
So oil and good breath can nourish your body.
yeah, I
Asana,
actually.
without those two, I don't trust that we can have a long asana practice.
Right, right. Any particular foods or ideas of diet at all?
Then it's very individual,
Right. Okay. Yeah. And no one
because
wants to get into diet particularly.
yeah, because then we have like three types: the kapha, the vata, and the
Yeah.
pitta. So we have like the sattvic food that we can check that in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, but in Ayurvedic perspective, some doshas need more oil. Warm food like a kapha can't have oil. Uh, need more spices. So this is very individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We
But
can.
you think that food is an important part of it as well? Do you advise students on food much? Do you think it's important?
It's important to check how the
Right.
digestion This
Mm-mm.
is very important.
Right. So you
You
do
see?
that with your students as well? Do you talk about that much?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
I
they
know. I think.
come with some problems, we always check how the digestion is, how they sleep, and the routine, like
Mm, mm-mm.
how many hours you are working, how your sleep, your dreams.
Mm-mm.
When you sleep is very important, you know.
That's what I'm getting from you
Yes,
for a number of times. Yeah, I
try.
wish I'd heard that as well. When it, kind of waking up at 1:30. I don't know whether you ever did that, but I used to kind of do that whole, wake up really really early and then do your practice and teach. And as you say, it's with along with the advanced asanas, it's kind of it could easily get to kind of try to the Ashtanga can make you feel very special, right? Like you're doing these advanced asanas practice, you get up at 1 a.m. in the morning. It's like, for those people that need to, or want to feel special, it's an easy buy-in. Like there's things that can make you feel, superhuman or special about it, but in the long term, those are the very things that really destroy you. I mean, getting up really early for years on end, the practicing, continuously practicing, I think an advanced practice without any rest or respite. Um, so yeah, what you say is very,
Yeah,
very
I really
reasonable.
like advanced postures. It's beautiful. I like what I my to feel my inner force when I do advanced posture. It's amazing. But we have to balance.
Mm, mm,
When I see the students getting in the shower in the morning, I start to teach at 6 a.m. and I know my students, and when they come and I see that the face is different, I always ask, did you sleep well? No, I couldn't sleep. I woke up at 3. Okay, so you do primary today. But I want to do. No, you are not going to do. You are going to do primary. you know, so that's the way I try to bring Ayurveda.
right. Mm.
Hey, if you didn't sleep, if you didn't eat, if you work like crazy the day before, you can do advance.
Mm. Very nice. Injecting some sensibleness into the Ashtanga method. You're still one of a few people doing that. Lara, just to wrap it up then, have you got just, I often say this, I don't always say this anymore, but sometimes I do this one. Can you just give me one guilty pleasure? We say one guilty pleasure, one thing you have, and it's not, you don't have to be guilty about it, but one thing just about you that you enjoy in life, and one inspiration, one thing that inspires you, just to finish our chat together today.
What's
Don't
inspired
think
me?
too much. Don't think too much. Something
One.
which it could be a book, a person, a place, an idea, anything.
Whoa. Many things inspire me. But what inspire me now is like old teachers that has vitality and they
Right.
still love the practice, and they still searching for answers about living, about
Hmm.
the soul, about spirituality. This inspire me. I have a friend
Great.
here
Hmm.
in Brazil. She's around 70 and she's Buddhist, and she never stopped studying about philosophy just to get more inside of her and ask their
Hmm.
questions. So it's not one person or one philosophy, but what inspire me is the mumukshutvam, is the the how is say in English, the one that uh,
Inquiry.
yeah, that
Yeah.
study
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
the knowledge goes to find the knowledge, and the knowledge
Yeah.
never ends. So this inspire me a lot when I see older people still studying and still studying also Ashtanga, trying to find and to refine Ashtanga and to keep practicing Ashtanga in a in a in a gentle way. This is very inspiring for me.
And your guilty pleasure.
My pleasure, my guilty
Yes.
pleasure.
Yeah. Just don't say chocolate. But you can, or coffee. It's boring.
Yeah, my guilty pleasure for vegans is when I am in the coast and I love fish and seafood.
Right. Well, you're a vegan. The rest of the time, you're a vegan, are you? And then you go to the coast and you eat this.
No, I'm not
No, no.
vegan.
Right. Okay.
As I am
So it
very
would be guilty if you were a vegan. It would be a guilty pleasure. But if you're not a vegan, it doesn't have to be guilty in it, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
and pizza. I
Fair enough.
love.
That's a new one. I don't think we've had that yet. So I'm very pleased with that one. Thank you.
Yeah, and another
Yeah.
guilty
I think you've got more.
pleasure for Ashtanga is I love to sleep until 8 a.m. If I could teach at 9, I would be very happy. But I really don't
Huh.
like to wake up at 4:30 and 5. It's it's an effort. I really love to stay in bed in the morning.
Nice. Yeah. Fantastic. Well,
And the
Laura, amazing. Yeah.
and
Thanks for
okay.
chatting with me. And it's been a really nice to get to know you a little bit. And yeah, wonderful. Thanks for
Yeah,
taking
it
the
was
time. I know
great.
that it's a message that I really feel is really relevant to people to get out there. And I'm really pleased that you said some of the things you did. So thanks again for coming on and sharing with us.
I thank you.